The other day I was sitting on my phone looking back at old photos and old videos when I came across something that just made me stop. And what I realized was we mounted this Kranzle K1322TS on this wall 5 years ago. And that got me thinking about other different detailing products and tools that I've had and realizing how little of those actually make it to a couple of years, let alone 5+ years. This thing has been through hundreds, if not thousands, of different rinse cycles, different snow foam cycles, and this thing has not skipped a beat. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my 5-year ownership review with the Kranzle K1322TS, talking about why I purchased this unit when I did. Would I still recommend purchasing this unit in 2025 when, let's be totally honest, there's other units out there that are cheaper and actually outperform this Kranzle. We're also going to talk about some issues that I've had with this unit, and then finally we're going to do a head-to-head comparison of the original specs of this and see how this thing is still performing now in terms of PSI and flow. Welcome back to the channel. Let's jump into it. So before we jump into the 5-year ownership review, let's quickly talk about what this machine is, the specs of it, the pricing, how it kind of compares to other units out there in general. So this is the Kranzle K1322TS, also known as the OG spec, Obsessed Garage spec. Now, Matt Mormon essentially came to a collaboration with Kranzle. He asked them to essentially take an 1122 pump, put it into a 1622 chassis, add the total stop function, giving us the K1322TS. Now this is around a 1.9 2.0 GPM machine at 1010 PSI with a 4.0 Orifice. This is a pressure washer you need to run on a 20 amp dedicated circuit because of using it with a foam cannon. Now this retails still to this day at $1,320 shipped to my house with taxes included here in Colorado. And that's not for any of this stuff down here, that is strictly the pump. Now I completely understand what you guys are probably saying behind the camera. You know, you could go buy an active pressure washer 2.0 with the specs are pretty much essentially the exact same here of the Kranzle for $350. You could go check out the new AR Blue 630 V2 that is a couple $100 less and has way more impressive specs than this. And that is something definitely to consider. This unit is not for everybody. This unit is for people who are, I would say, obsessed and who also want a unit that is going to last a long time. One of the biggest things that was of interest to me with this particular unit was the repairability. Yeah, when I started my detailing business, you know, I've used gas pressure washers. I used to wash outside. That was all I had. Then I upgraded to a Greenworks electric pressure washer. You know, I'd take my little Greenworks cart out and I'd grab the hose and, you know, plug it in, and there's water leaking everywhere. And, you know, you'd screw in the pressure washer hose on it, and it took forever to get set up. And having something like this professionally wall mounted that looks the business, it's German engineered, I was hoping it was going to last a long time, is why I went with this unit. And I was absolutely obsessed with watching Matt Mormon's videos on this thing, and it was really a dream of mine to own one of these. And I worked very hard in my detailing career to, you know, build out this shop. This shop, how it looks now, I think a lot of people just think, you know, it just happens overnight. It took many years to get into this shop. It took many dollars to build this entire unit out. It was a complete blank space. And even at the time I was purchasing this unit, I was, you know, building a mezzanine in here, cutting up the floors to put a floor drain in, doing epoxy, doing lighting, doing all of the plumbing. It was a lot of expenses, but I knew this had to be one of those things that I was going to have here. You know, that's something I always consider with detailing tools. I am not necessarily always picking the absolute most expensive, but kind of the name brands that I hear a lot of people work with. And when you're growing up in the detailing industry, you know, you look towards those big brands. You go to Rupes or Flex or, you know, in this particular case, Kranzle. And I can tell you with a lot of those other products, I've had good experiences, but they haven't been perfect. Recently, I purchased one of the new Rupes 21mm battery operated polishers, and I was, you know, one of the first to get them when they first came out. I put about 9 months on that machine and I started having issues with it. Took me a little while to get it down to Rupes here, and they actually ended up handing me a brand new unit. You know, after 9 months of polishing on cars, that unit completely failed. Now, That's not to say a Kranzle couldn't do that. It definitely could as well, but that's been kind of my experience. I've replaced many polishers, I've replaced many vacuums, different car dryers, and multiple tools. And this thing still to this day has just been an absolute workhorse. Now, the thing I want you to think about when you start considering a pressure washer is think about the amount of cycles you are using a particular unit like this. You know, let's say we take 100 cars and wash them. You know, typically if you're washing the wheels first and then doing a foam and then doing a rinse and then doing another foam, think about how many times you're turning on that machine, taking the pressure off of it, holding pressure in there, then to release it again. All of those different times, you know, you just take 100 cars, you're at least doing, you know, 200 cycles of rinsing, 200 cycles of foaming a car, if not even more. Then you start getting up into the 500, 600, 700 cars washed, and the numbers are kind of staggering. And that's been what's so impressive about the Kranzle here. And again, I wanted to have something that I didn't have to replace frequently. You know, my friend Eric from Drive Protected just recently reached out to me. He said, "Hey dude, I finally bought a Kranzle." And he was in the same boat I was years and years ago before I got this machine of, you know, you'd go buy a $200 or $300 pressure washer, you'd use it for a year, it would inevitably die, then you just go buy another one and continually replace it. I don't like the kind of mentality of buying something only to throw it away just to replace it. I like having the ability to service it. Now, servicing a unit like this is extremely important, and I was probably one of the worst at actually servicing mine. You see, these come with a 35-foot power cable, and when we originally put this up here, my dad was like, "Hey, I think we need to cut the cable so it's a little bit easier to get off the wall." And I was like, "Nope, don't want to cut the cable. I'm scared of this machine, don't want to mess it up." You know, him knowing full well you could fully do that. And with how this wall is set up, you know, I had it shoved in there. It was a pain in the butt to get off of the wall. And I, you know, just put off the oil maintenance on this thing. Really what you're supposed to do with these when you get a fresh unit is, I believe it's either 50 hours or 100 hours. I'm pretty sure it's 100 hours after, you know, you originally start using it, you're supposed to replace the oil. Now, it's not that hard to change the oil. You basically take it off the wall here, you drain the oil, let it sit, and then pour new oil in it. Now, the Kranzle gear oil is $55 for a liter. It's not cheap to do. Nothing with these machines are cheap, so that's something to consider. But I let this thing go for almost 3.5 years, maybe even slightly longer, without ever changing the oil first. Now, what actually started happening is oil started leaking out of the machine, and it would leak up here onto the stainless, which I can't really see. Like, I have to kind of get up here on my tippy toes. I mounted this a little bit too high. I really wish I would have mounted it slightly lower, but you know, it's all good. What I started to notice is I was dripping oil down here. So there was a lot of oil coming out of this machine. So I finally said, okay, let's order the gear oil. Let's actually change it. So when we finally cracked this thing open, changed the oil, it was an absolute milkshake. And it was also, of course, very down on oil. It had been running with very, very low oil for the better part of a year to a year and a half, which is pretty insane to say the least. And changed it, was working well, and then it started to leak a little bit more and more oil. So then I decided, hey, I'm gonna reach out to Obsessed Garage. What do I need for this? So they gave me links to all the stuff I needed to get for it, meaning new check valves, all new seals inside, and shipped it out to us. Now, recently, within this last week, we replaced all of those check valves, all the seals. Now, it's not cheap to do that. You know, it was over $200, which is quite hilarious when you think I could literally go buy a new Ryobi pressure washer for the price to just replace seals in this thing. That's something to consider for sure. But again, I ran this thing pretty much out of oil with an absolute milkshake full of water inside for years. And every single time I needed it, it turns on. It has never cut out on me. It's never done anything. This thing has not skipped a beat. And again, if you consider this to a normal car, this is like not changing the oil in 50 or 60,000 miles. Like, it's stupid. That's what I did, but the unit still freaking works, and it's insane. Now, how long after this will this thing continue working? I don't know, but every single time I need this, I can rely on it. And that's something that is extremely important to me. Again, yes, you can go buy the $150 pressure washer. You could use it in a professional setting, but it's not if it burns out, it's when it burns out. Is it gonna burn out on you when you're mid-wash and you've got an alkaline or an acid soap on there or an acid wheel cleaner, and all of a sudden this machine stops working? That's a pain in the ass to deal with. Now, I was so confident in this machine for the better part of 4.5 years, maybe even slightly longer, I had no backup. I did not have an extra pressure washer here. I had absolutely nothing. Now, as I'm starting to review pressure washers, of course I have, extras laying around. So if something does happen, I have something, but it hasn't skipped a beat, and I need my tools to be reliable. And that's why I've gone with the Kranzle. So I guess the big question to answer here, and a lot of you guys are gonna ask, why would you buy a unit like this in 2025? Why not go to the AR630 V2, that is cheaper than this unit, has better specs? Why not go something like an Active 2.0? And again, for me, what it comes down to is I've been able to rely on this machine. It's not to say that either of those two are bad. I think the Active 2.0 is a phenomenal pressure washer for folks out there who don't have $1,300 to drop on just a pressure washer. You can still wall mount it, make it look very, very nice, and have a really good, reliable machine. For me though, I need something that is going to last and I want to repair. So maybe why not go to the AR630? And maybe I will at some point. Maybe I'll test one at some point. Maybe I'll, buy one of those to compare with one of these units and go, okay, the Kranzle is off the wall. But this machine to me it was always a dream for me to get as I was watching Matt build out the garages and test this unit. And it was one of those things. I mean, you post one of these on social media and people are like, oh my God, a Kranzle. Like those are just so cool. And I completely agree. They are just cool units. They look incredible. It's really funny to watch my customers' reactions every single time they come in here and they look at this pressure washer ball and they go, damn, that is really neat. And I totally agree. I am very, very numb to being able to use one of these, and it is super, super cool to be able to own one and own one for 5 years and beat the snot out of it and ignore the maintenance on it, and for it to still work properly is truly incredible to me. So there is no doubt this machine is still expensive. It is, overpriced compared to quite a few of the other machines, but if that's what you are looking for, this is what you're gonna go for. And again, the AR630 V2 might be the latest and greatest out there, and I'm glad it is, because that means that Kranzle is now, a little bit falling behind, and now they need to reiterate and come out with something else. Competition is good. I'm not gonna sit here and fluff and tell you, you can only get a Kranzle. There's nothing out there good. There is amazing machines out there, and I think we should realize that. What this has also done is this has kind of been the industry benchmark, and now you're starting to see, a lot of cheaper pressure washers out there, the Ryobis, getting into other cheaper ones out there, starting to get to the point of almost matching a unit like this, and I think that's a good thing. But again, some of these units are sealed units, so you are buying that unit, you have a lifespan on that, you chuck it in the trash, you buy another one. Is that the best way to do things? I don't know. I like having the ability to repair it if something fails, but at some point, maybe you get to the point you have to replace an electric motor or more expensive components in here, and it's not worth it to actually repair that unit. So maybe at that point, yeah, I do go AR630 V2 or something similar to that. But I've been so impressed with this machine. And again, if you were to ask me today, which pressure washer would I buy? I would buy the same exact one. It's been really, really impressive for me. So one of the last things I want to do here, I want to pressure test this. I want to flow test this. We'll show you all of the data. We're going to use all of the different orifice sizes so you guys can get a feel of where this thing sits. We're going to compare it to what Matt has on the website in his videos so you guys can see what a brand new unit should look like versus a very worn out, very neglected, non-properly maintenance machine. But this, again, has all new seals, all new check valves in it. So theoretically, it should be right up there with how it was day one. So we're gonna get into the testing phase of this now. Now, this unit specifically off Obsessed Garage site, what they put as their testing was a 1.9 GPM flow with a 4.0 orifice at 1010 PSI at 13.5 amps, again with a 4.0 orifice. Now what I'm slightly confused by is in his video when he was originally doing that pressure washer series, he got 1.97 GPM with a 4.0 orifice. He actually did calculate it incorrectly. Instead of using 8.34, which is the weight of a gallon of water, he used 8.32, which would make it slightly higher. So technically it's 1.96 is what this unit was tested at. They put it at 1.9. I'm assuming you're going to have a little bit of difference between all the machines. We'll be curious to see what mine is. Now we're also going to do this with the 3.5 orifice and a 4.5 orifice, as well as with the foam cannon. It should pull 16.2 amps or slightly higher. We'll kind of see how all of that is. Also keep in mind, my gauge here might be different than Matt's and is different from Matt's. So we could have slightly higher readings, slightly lower. If it's around that 1000 PSI, I think we're going to be good getting that same GPM flow. So let's first off start off with the 4.0, do our pressure and do our GPM. So we've got our 4.0 orifice in here, also got the PSI meter, we've got the meter in the current draw, as well as our stopwatch. So I'm going to start this. Once it hits 10 seconds, I will pull the trigger and engage it till 1 minute and 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So we are currently running right under 1000 PSI, probably right at 990 PSI. And our current draw is slightly under 13.0 once it kind of levels out. So interesting, because Matt was at 13.5 amps with this 4.0 orifice. Okay. 3, 2, 1, stop. If we take 15.74 dispensed into that bucket divided by 8.34, that gives us 1.88 GPM. So what's interesting though, yet again, I'm slightly confused because on their website it just shows 1.9 GPM. In Matt's testing, he actually got 1.97. And again, 4.0 orifice, 1010 PSI. We're slightly under here, I'd say right at that 990 range, but that's still pretty impressive for a 5-year-old unit there. Now, again, interestingly enough, it was also pulling slightly less on the meter up there, was pulling right under 13 amps. So yeah, interesting stuff. Not sure if that's horrendously bad, but in my impression, that seems pretty good to lose very, very little after 5 years of use and abuse. Same thing here with the 4.5 orifice 40-degree tip. We're going to start the timer. We're going to go on 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So looking right at 800 PSI. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. We dispensed 16.5 pounds now, which gives us 1.97 GPM at 800 PSI. So definitely a little bit more flow there, but definitely down on the pressure. Just wanted to give you these as extras. Next on to the 3.5. Same exact test here with a 3.5 orifice. Gonna run it for 1 minute. 3, 2, 1. Just slightly over 1100 PSI. In all honesty, the 3.5 is typically what I used instead of the 4.0. It's just slight preference difference there. The 3.5's just always been what I've used. Not to say it's better or anything, but just different. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. With a 3.5 degree tip, we dispense 15.46 pounds, which gives us 1.86 GPM, which is still no slouch. Pretty impressive results here from the Kranzle. Again, considering 5 years old. So lastly, I want to test here the foam cannon. Then I'll put this all together, break down exactly what everything was, which the current draw, so that you guys can have a nice, good understanding of where this machine sits. MTM foam cannon here, and this is a 1.25 millimeter orifice. Let's see what the PSI is. Right at about 1300 PSI there. So looking pretty good. All right, guys, so I've created a little chart for you here. It's always nice to visualize this instead of just a talking head spitting a bunch of numbers at you. So off the website from Obsessed Garage with a 4.0 nozzle, they get 1.9 GPM, 1010 PSI, and 13.5 amp current draw. On my unit, which is 5 years old, of course, as I've said a million times in this video, 1.88 GPM, 990 PSI at 12.67 amp draw. That's with the 4.0 nozzle. Now, I'm curious why the current would be quite a bit less there. I don't know. I am not an electrical engineer. Somebody can probably tell me. I am using an AC line splitter, importantly with the 10X, which is why you see the decimal place in the wrong point in the video there. You just move it over one. Supposedly, this is more accurate. If anybody has better insights on this, please let me know. I'm still learning all of this stuff because, yeah, it is confusing. I know Matt's got this dialed in. He's the OG of OGs, so not trying to step on his toes. You know, just trying to show what my machine is doing here. Now, bumping down to a 3.5 Orifice, that drops our GPM to 1.85. PSI up to 1100 and a 14.2 amp current draw. Bumping up in orifice size to a 4.5, we get 1.97 GPM, nice little bump there, down to 800 PSI and just under 11 amps of current. Now the foam cannon, 1.25 millimeter orifice, 1300 PSI, 16.7 amp current draw, and I believe Matt's was 16.2, so pretty interesting there. Now let's get back to the video. All right, guys, so now that we've gone through that, I'm curious to know what you think. Is it more than you expected it to be down on power? Did you expect it to be exactly the same? Again, also consider like just using different attachments and things. You can have like slight variances, slight differences. So, you know, that 4.0 that I have may not be the exact 4.0 that Matt uses, and they always have some discrepancies in them. So that could make up for the 0.012 difference that I got instead of the 1.9 GPM. It's slightly down. Now, again, the only thing I'm confused about is what Matt publishes on his website just says 1.9, 1010 PSI, 4.0 orifice. But again, in his video, he got 1.97 with that 4.0 at 1010. So I'm a little confused which one's which. I would assume the 1.97 is probably the more accurate one, so maybe we're down more than I actually think. But I guess at the end of the day, I'm curious to know what you guys think. 1.8 GPM at basically 990 PSI 5 years later on a very abused machine that wasn't maintained properly. I would say that is truly impressive. Now, I guess the overall question that I have to myself is, you know, if this unit were to die right now, for whatever reason, would I purchase another one of these? Would I go the AR630 V2 route? And it's a tricky one. I would probably purchase another Kranzle just because I haven't played around with the AR. I've heard nothing but good things. It is slightly cheaper, like I said, has better performance. Yeah, I don't know. It'd kind of be a toss-up. I'd really like to play with an AR before I could definitively say I would buy another Kranzle. But again, I'm just so impressed with the era this was in, where it was at, that still 5 years later, it's still performing, in my opinion, amazingly well, and still doing everything I need it to, you know, even after hundreds and hundreds of washes down the road. And again, yeah, you're going to spend some money here and there, changing the oil, changing the seals. Theoretically, according to them, shouldn't need to change the seals really anymore. I am going to be doing another oil change on this in probably 2 weeks, just because I want to make sure there's, you know, no residual water left over from it draining any of those other fragments. So we put fresh oil in there. I think we'll drain it, refill it up, and then kind of monitor. I've seen zero leaking, which is great. I've been using it a little bit, so there is no signs of leaking after the seals and valve replacement. But again, I'm so impressed with this unit. It looks incredible. I mean, still to this day, if you were to purchase one of these, this is one of the best pressure washers in the market, bar none. Are they unbelievably expensive compared to other stuff? Absolutely, yes. I do feel it's justified. And yeah, I'm still absolutely thrilled with my purchase and very happy to have a Kranzle sitting on my wall. So that's my 5-year ownership review. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Man, I've been impressed with it. I want to run this unit into the ground and see how long it's going to last until something like completely blows this out of the water. Like the AR, again, it's got great specs on it and definitely bumps it up quite a bit. It's just not at the point where I'm ready to, you know, retire this bad boy when it's still ripping. So really proud of this thing, really impressed with it, and for sure I'd buy another one. There's no doubt about that. There's just some other cool stuff out there. And again, in another 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you can only imagine what other cool stuff we're gonna have on the market. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in another one soon. Bye-bye.